I'm going to talk with you about democracy, the state of democracy in Europe, and I will not do that alone. We have invited some experts in this area. Next to me is sitting Jean-Christophe Cambadélis. He is Vice President of the Party of European Social Democrats. He is coming from the PS France. Next to him it's Laszlo Kovacs from the MSZP in Hungary, MP, and he is former Commissioner European Commissioner for Tax, if I'm correct. Welcome. On my other side is sitting Massimo D'Alema. He is the President of the Foundation for European Progressive Studies and former Prime Minister of Italy. And at the end of the table, it's Katarina Nevedalova, and she is a member of the European Parliament and also Vice President of the Party of European Socialists. So, democracy is one of the important topics we are working on together in the Party of European Socialists. There are a few major challenges we are facing in Europe when it comes to the state of democracy. First of all, it's the devastating effects of the financial and economic crisis, and this can be seen everywhere. It has been provoking unchecked and unbalanced and unaccountable capitalism, and we have to find strategies to fight against it, to reinstate the checks and balances. Then secondly, we can see the growing divide in Europe between the voters, the citizens, and the policymakers, the politicians. And this is, of course, one of the topics which is on top of our agenda, not only in the national member states, but in particular in the run-up to the European elections. Because as we have seen in 2009, the turnout for the European elections is ever decreasing since the European Parliament was installed. And now the majority of citizens stays at home, is not going to the polling stations, and claims that it doesn't make any difference if you go to vote for the European elections or if you don't go to vote, so they rather not go. And the question is, of course, how can we close the divide or make the divide between the citizens and the policymakers smaller? So how can we build the bridges, in particular in the run-up to the European elections next year? And thirdly, I think that is one of the big challenges that everybody is facing in their own member states, is the rise of the nationalism and populist parties and movements, which are a serious threat to democracy. Look at member states like Hungary, where the basic rights, human rights, are being jeopardized by government, which is not taking into consideration the position of people and international human rights treaties, I would say. But we can also look at parties like the Le Pen party in France, or look at other populist parties, for example, in the Netherlands or in Italy. You can see a serious increase in those kind of parties and movements. And the question is, of course, how are we going to counter that? How are we going to fight against this? And what is our alternative which we can offer to the people in our member states and in Europe? So it's quite a broad perspective we are discussing here. I also would like to take the opportunity to make you aware of the fact that the new leadership of the Party of European Socialists, the presidency, has decided in its work program for this year and next year that this is such an important topic that we need to have a committee to work on this topic on a regular basis. And we just had the first meeting under the chairwomanship of Tanja Fajon from Slovenia, and also with the involvement of the PvdA in the Netherlands. We are going to develop, hopefully, a very active kind of group where we can exchange best practices and do some research and provide some answers. So I really encourage all of you and your parties to play a very active role in this committee. But now I would like to give the floor to Jean-Christophe. He will speak in French, so for those of you who need translation, please make sure that you put your headsets on. Thank you very much.
Merci Marije.
Very much, Marije. I've been told that I have 5 minutes. I was told that 3 minutes would be even better. So I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. And please forgive me if I develop this in bullet points. 3 ideas. The first idea is simple. We're at a crossroads. Either Europe changes or it falls apart. And why is that so? Well, the fact is that for 10 years now, the European right has been leading Europe. And if you look at Europe as it stands today, the coffers are empty and the streets are full. And we could here highlight one first concept. If you have less growth, you'll have less democracy. You can't have democracy when over 50% of young people are unemployed, when mass unemployment reigns, when there is economic recession, and the only prospect seems to be austerity. That makes people angry. It makes people abstain. There is a very low turnout. So you have people in the streets, nobody turning up to vote. Obviously, populism will flourish. And as well as that, the second idea is that we have an infernal couple in control in Europe, the right wing and the populists. The right is ruining the economy, ignoring the people. The populists are ruining the people, ignoring the economy. And these two, this alliance of enemies is creating the present emergence in all countries, and we're particularly aware of it in France. I mean, if you look at current polls, the Front National, the right-wing party in France, could be the top party in the European elections. And if you look at the situation across Europe, it's absolutely obvious that because of the policies developed by the European right, recession, unemployment, austerity, the extreme right may spread and grow. The last idea that I'd like to talk about here is also quite simple. The Party of European Socialists has to save European democracy. To do that, we need an emergency program. Social urgency, democratic urgency. We need to try to relaunch economic policy. We have to redirect it. All the socialist parties in Europe are attempting to do that. It's what the French government is trying to do in council, but it's in a minority because of all the right-wing parties that are in power. And let me just say a couple of words about the youth guarantee and Mrs. Merkel. The fact that Mrs. Merkel is talking about the youth guarantee now is due to the fact that she didn't do it earlier. So in a way, she is criticizing her own policies. And we have to draw attention to that fact. And we were right to launch our appeal. So an urgent program to fight the right, to fight the populists, that's the most effective way of defending democracy.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Christophe. Thank you very much. I think you tackled some very, very interesting points. And also what I'm very interested in is that you say we need to have an agenda of urgency. We really need to be proactive. And that is the only way we can try to counter this. And I think that is really one of the biggest challenges in front of us. We will speak about this a little bit later because afterwards we will have a short debate with the plenary. So we will definitely get back on this point. Now I would like to give the floor to Katarina Nevadalova, who will mainly speak about how to the challenges towards the European elections and how to make the divide between the people and the policymakers smaller. Catharina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mariah. Can you hear me?
No. There's no microphone.
Once again? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, perfect. So thank you very much. I will be very brief because I was talking so much today, so you heard me a lot. But I will try to tackle a little bit this issue from the side of how can we attract the people? We have the year of citizens, year of citizenship, but the question is how can we attract the citizens to really care about the European Union, because this is a problem. 67% of the young people don't care about the Union because they have the feeling that the European Union doesn't care about them. And there is a role also of us as the European socialists to attract much more the people to see that we care what they need. We were always the front runners who fight for solidarity, for social justice, and for other issues which are very important for us. But sometimes we are forgetting to listen to the people. But I'm very proud that as the Party of European Socialists, we are the front runners of a special new campaign before the European elections, which is called the League of Young Voters. And several of you already participated in this unique project, which is together with the other European political parties, we would like to show the youth generation, the young generation of Europe, that we really care. We want to listen what they want from Europe, what they think that it's important for them. So this is also one of the ways we can go. What as a socialist can do? We are trying to listen to the people, but what do people really need? They need love, they need food, they need home, but they also need the identity. And this is also one of the democratic principles which we should discuss. Yesterday we had a very nice discussion in the presidency, but also I hope that there will be some discussion today on the fundamental program. What we want to be our values. We have some, but also we need to discuss about the other outstanding issues, like if we want, what kind of Europe we want. So change this question from if we want the European Union to the question what kind of union we want. Because this is a very unique project. This is here for 60 years, and it really helped the European continent to preserve the democracy, the peace, and the good cooperation. So we need to continue in this great project. But we just think about that and listen to the people, what they want, what kind of other ways for this project they want. If they want the federal Europe or something else, or if they want to be more represented, if they want to have more powers for the European Parliament or for which institutions. So we really need to much more listen to the people, but I think that we do that. But this is the only way how we can strengthen the democracy in European Union. Very short. Well, thank you very much.
Well, Catharina, thank you very much. You can notice that you're a member of the European Parliament because you normally get to speak very briefly, and I'm very happy also with Jean-Christophe, who set the trend of bringing a very brief and to-the-point message. So I would like to encourage the other panelists to follow the same example. And first, I would like to give the floor to Laszlo.
Thank you. So when Hungary joined the community of democratic European countries, the European Union, in 2004, then we accepted, and not only the government, not only the parliament, but a referendum with 82% of the votes accepted the shared values, the respect of democracy, the rule of law, the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, the rights of minorities, the freedom of press and expression. So all the values of the European integration. And we legitimately hoped that democracy, the rule of law, will never be endangered again after more than 30 years under the Soviet bloc and be a member of the Soviet bloc. We mentioned during the discussion many times, and even Maria referred to it, that the international economic and financial crisis, or financial and economic crisis, that started from the US and hit Europe, certainly increased the extremist tendencies and extremist parties, not only Euroscepticism, but the complete denial of European integration, and undemocratic forces had some fuel on their activities. Hungary was not an exception, but in 2010, when the party of current Prime Minister Orban, the party that belongs to the European People's Party, got two-thirds majority in the parliament. You have to know that they certainly never get two-thirds majority in the society. Among the electorate, they got 1/3 of the votes only. But according to the Hungarian legislation on elections, they got legitimately two-thirds in the parliament. What they used for this two-thirds majority was catastrophic, because they abolished the rules of law, the democratic institution. They occupied all the public positions and all the public institutions, and they replaced democracy with the uncontrolled role and rule of Prime Minister Orban and his group and his party. So Hungary now is in a very serious trouble, and it was accompanied by an unorthodox economic policy. Let me quote just a few figures. Now we have 4 million people, 40% of the 10 million population, that are living under the limit of the standard of living. There are more than 1.5 million who are starving and who are in very bad social situation. 500,000 children go to school without having breakfast. Mm-hmm. So that is the result of their catastrophic, unorthodox economic policy. Mm-hmm. And they always refer to the two-thirds majority, and they claim that they got the mandate from the people, which is not the case. Whenever the European institutions, the European Commission, the European Parliament, or other institutions like the Council of Europe or the Venice Commission send some warnings to the Hungarian government, they always claim that it is an illegitimate interference with the internal affairs of Hungary. They simply do not respect the rules, they simply do not respect the shared values, and they even declared, the Prime Minister declared himself, that they are waging a war of freedom, a war for independence against the European Union. It is a nonsense, it is very absurd, because we are a member of the community and we are waging a freedom fight against it. So we are on both sides of the front. The problem is that in 2014 elections, they even, we have some legitimate fear that they will try to even manipulate the outcome of the elections. And the problem is that though the European institutions like the European Commission and even the European Parliament sometimes raise the issue of introducing sanctions against Hungary. And you should understand that the position and the situation of the Socialist Party is very delicate, because if any sanctions, financial, economic sanctions, would be introduced, it would hit the people of Hungary, not the government, not the party of Orban, but the average people who have been suffering for this catastrophic economic policy and the undemocratic practice of the current government. Therefore, we suggest that in the European Union, our comrades, the socialist group, the group of socialists and democrats, should try to convince the People's Party to introduce sanctions against the party of Prime Minister Orban, because actually they are responsible for all the undemocratic tendencies in Hungary. So that is our position, and we expect that in 2014, when we have the next elections, we can overcome with the unity of all the democratic forces, not only the Socialist Party, but all the democratic forces who want to change the government. And of course, we also hope that in the European parliamentary elections, the Party of European Socialists and Democrats will win majority. And in that case, we can hope that the European Council, with a majority of the left-wing government, can also give protection to all the democratic forces against the undemocratic tendencies. Thank you.
Well, Laszlo, thank you very much. I think you live in one of the most complicated countries of the European Union at the moment, and you must know that you have the full support of the Party of European Socialists also in the run-up to your elections. We closely work together now with all our member parties facing elections in the task force national elections. So we try to support as much as we can, and we know it's extremely complicated, but we really hope that there's a possibility of change because you need it and we need it in Europe. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to give the floor to Massimo D'Alema. I'm very honored that you can be here with us today. We have a very good working relation, I would say, between the Party of European Socialists and FEPS. It's been very pleasant, and so I would like to give the floor to you now.
Thank you very much. Let me raise some question, speaking frankly, because while we are very clear about changing European policies, employment, growth, social justice, we want a different Europe. In my view, we are not so clear about our political project on Europe. And let me say frankly that at the core of the European crisis, there is, in my view, the lack of politics, the weakness of European institutions. Because it's true, the citizens feel Europe is not able to ensure the economic recovery, the creation of jobs. But on the other hand, the European Union is increasingly perceived by the European citizens as a distant, bureaucratic, technocratic power detached from the hard reality of the common people, who feel impotent and incapable of exerting their influence or control on the decision-making processes taking place in Brussels. And this is, in my view, the result of the neoliberal hegemony, because they were so able to create a so-called government of rules, criteria, that the political decisions of Europe pretend to present themselves as neutral, technical, without alternative. Europe wants that. This is the message to the citizens. And in my view, the European democracy seems to be in state of siege, expropriated by financial global powers, financial markets, rating agencies, which have more power than parliaments and government, and compressed between technocratic, neoliberal union and populistic movements on the other side. When populistic movement, I believe that we did something in that sense, a deeper analysis, because we have populism on the right, we have populism on the left, but it is common. What this movement across Europe have in common are, firstly, the call to the demos against the elites, identified as those responsible for crisis. The political elites, including socialists, we are perceived as a part of the European system, maybe the weak part of the European system, as a part of the system. On the other side, populism is a call to the ethnos, national, local, regional, against Europe perceived as distant, hostile, undemocratic. And we are in the middle, in a very risky condition. And the only response, in my view, is to bring politics at European level. Politics is conflict. Politics is the possibility of choice between different options. Politics is a clear mandate, is accountability. Politics means that austerity is not a neutral, technical decision. It is a political decision, and it is possible to do a different policy. This is the meaning of presenting a candidate, a program. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. And our political project means, in my view, rebalancing European institutions, shifting from the hyperpower of the Council, which means the power of the strongest European countries, to an empowerment of the Parliament and of the Commission. The Commission, which has to become slowly a real government of Europe, accountable, a parliamentary government of Europe. And I believe this political project is very important if you want to be, not only to be alternative to the conservative, but to be perceived as an alternative to the current conservative Europe, which is more difficult. Because if the alternative is between an anti-European protest and an European establishment, I believe that we risk a Euro disaster in the next European elections. That's why, which is very important for the socialists, is to make clear that we want and we must lead people who want to change Europe. Otherwise, if the election will become a referendum pro-Europe or anti-Europe, I believe it will be difficult. And I believe that many anti-European people will be members of the next European Parliament. This is the key, in my view, and we need not only a strong economic and social platform, we need a stronger political project.
Thank you very much. Well, Massimo, thank you very much. For me, it would be very easy to come up with lots of questions now, but I think that would not be fair because we have promised to have a debate also with you in a room. I have received 4 requests to take the floor, and I really would like to invite the speakers to be very brief and to the point. So no speeches, but really questions. And the first person I would like to invite is Richard Falber. He is a member of European Parliament from the Czech Republic, CSSD. And I would also like to invite already Marjolein Nieuwdorp from the PvdA to come up to the podium. And once again, brief, to the point, no speeches, just specific questions, please. And after that, I will invite Sita Gourmay. So,
it's a strange situation. The bosses made long speeches and left, and are not listening to what the delegates say. A strange discipline.
There's one prime minister sitting in the first row, so thank you very much. And the
Only
president
one.
of Best Women.
I don't have a question. Or I will put it as a question. Why don't we analyze the reason why the trade unions do not believe to our parties? The last elections to the European Parliament were an absolute failure. The unions did not vote for us. Nobody made such an analysis. I'm an old trade union leader. I was chairman of the Czechoslovak Confederation of Trade Unions, and after the split of the Republic, of the Czech Confederation. The unions are seeing the dismantling of the European social model. When the Berlin Wall existed, the enemy was behind the wall. But when the wall disappeared, the enemy suddenly appeared among us. And there are attempts to cut everything which the unions and the socialist government have built in decades. If we do not analyze the reasons, we are not going to change the situation. The bad way started with the third way of Tony Blair, who said the same as the right for winning the elections. And then the electorate said, but they are saying the same things which the right was saying all the time, so probably they will do it better. And one final point. The Nordic states have high taxes, strong unions, big redistribution, and they are all competitive. I wonder why. It is because they are Protestants and they don't have confession, they cannot steal and lie. Without a thorough analysis of the reasons why we have lost the confidence of the people, of the unions, we will not get any success.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Marjolein.
Thank you. My name is Marjolein Nuder. I'm part of the Dutch delegation here. My question is about an idea of the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs, Frans Timmermans. And he is saying that, well, as everyone knows, in order to be part of the European Union, countries must meet the Copenhagen criteria. And I think it will be also interesting, and it's his idea, to see if the countries that are part of the European Union right now, how they do on these criteria. So how do you think about monitoring this? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank you because you are one of the few people here, I think, in a delegation who was directly elected by a party congress. So I would like to use the opportunity to say that in the PVDA, part of the PES Congress delegation and the delegation towards the councils is directly elected by the members. So I would say it's a very good example of internal party democracy. Thank you very much. I now would like to briefly go back to the... Oh no, first Zita Gourmay. Yeah.
Oh.
You can go.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So first of all, I would say yesterday we had a fantastic sister having birthday, Mareje, but today Rovana Plump has birthday. Come here because this is the flower for the Vice President of PS Women who really deserve. She's doing an excellent job as minister in Victor Ponta, my friend's government. So we really have to respect the work that she's doing in Victor's cabinet. So I just would like to give you the flower.
Okay. Thank you very much for this intermezzo.
But of course, I'm here. European Citizens Initiative. I was the co-rapporteur of the European Citizens Initiative. And of course, we said, oh, let's have some good campaign like FTT and the others. So now my question is, how can we deal during the year of European citizens, with the European Citizens Initiative, what are our main goals? And the second thing, as a Hungarian, I'm very thankful for all of you, especially my friend from Belgium, who helped us to make it clear why the Hungarian democracy is in pieces. And when the Hungarian democracy is in pieces, this whole European construction is moving. So that's why my question is, what can the others do to save, like Alain and my friends in Belgium, the European parliamentarians, what can you do at home to save the Hungarian democracy? Because this is European democracy. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Zita, for your brief and to-the-point questions, which is extremely complicated, by the way. So, but I would first like to give the floor to Jean-Christophe to respond. Basically, there are 3 questions, so you don't have to answer all of the questions, but maybe we can see who can answer the other parts of who wants to react. The first question comes from our friend from the Czech Republic, who I don't see at the moment, but his question is, why don't we analyze the reasons why we have lost the trade unions and the support? And then the second question concerning the Copenhagen criteria. Once member states have entered the European Union, should we have some sort of mechanism to monitor the implementation of the criteria, well, not accessing, but being part? And then the last question of Zita concerning the European Citizen Initiative. Jean-Christophe. You can decide which part.
Alors, bon, je vais essayer de répondre à
All right. Well, I'll try to answer 2 questions out of the 3. First of all, the unions aren't that far removed from us, even if they're not totally integrated, because the ETUC works with us. What more than that, actually. However, it is true that trade unionists are wondering about the effectiveness of the Social Democrats. Is it possible to put together an alternative program? Is it possible, once they are in power, to implement that program? So, between grassroots trade unionists and the European Social Democrats, that there is a gap, because we might as well admit it. When we were in power, and we were the majority party in Europe at one point, well, we can't claim that the policies that we applied reassured the trade unions. Secondly, I think that we have to make Orban the black sheep of Europe. And if we think about the electoral process, we're going to be fighting the EPP. We're going to have to let people in Europe know who he is, what kind of policies he's applying, because it throws light on the policies applied by the EPP in Europe. So we have to tell the EPP leaders either say goodbye to Orban or say that you support what he's doing. And it would be interesting, I think, for our activist friends to get involved in this campaign on Orban, and for the political parties to develop it. I'd just like to add one more thing. I think that these European elections offer us an opportunity to Europeanize our policies and to politicize Europe, because of 2 things. Because the Lisbon Treaty is going to make it possible to choose within the parliamentary majority a candidate for the presidency of the Commission. And that will be the end of a long, long story in Europe, the historical compromise between the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats. And we'll enter a new phase of unification with the politicization of the European Parliament. And secondly, because the peoples of Europe have questions about technocratic neutrality in the European construction process. And they want to make sure that they have a role and that they can make a choice, because in a democracy, the key thing is the ability and the right to choose.
Well, thank you very much. Laszlo?
I would like to answer to our Czech colleague, but in a broader text or in a broader conception. After the crisis hit Europe, I tried to analyze the impact of the crisis on the elections, on the parliamentary elections, how it what kind of impact it had on the socialist governments and on the conservative governments, socialist in opposition or socialist in the government. And I concluded that the socialists lost, either in government or in opposition. And the reason is that the supporters, the social composition of the supporters of the Socialist Party are from the lower income groups of the society, and on their situation, the crisis was certainly more detrimental than on the higher income groups. So it is clear that neither the socialists nor the conservatives or Christian Democrats could give any kind of shelter to their supporters against the crisis, but the supporters of the socialists were more seriously hit than the supporters of the conservative. For instance, if I take the example of Germany and Austria, in Germany, there was a grand coalition with conservative leadership, and the Social Democrats lost more than the conservatives. In Austria, it was just the other way around, because there was a grand coalition with socialist leadership, and the socialists lost more than the conservative. So it shows that the social composition of the electorate was the factor that had this kind of influence. Now, the reason why I am more optimistic for the next elections in 2013 and 14, that now in those countries where socialists lost and came a conservative governments, now it came clear to the electorate what is the difference between crisis management of the socialists and of the conservatives or liberal parties. The difference is that the socialist tries to manage the crisis on the detriment, as far as possible, on the detriment of the higher income groups, and trying to give special attention to the problems of the lower income groups. The conservative government is doing the opposite way. For instance, in Hungary, crisis management of the current government is very typically conservative or liberal, because they put all the burdens on the lower income groups and not on the higher income groups. That is the difference. And now I think the electorate realized that, and that certainly increased the hopes and the chances of the left-wing parties, of the socialist and labor parties in 2013 and 14.
Thank you very much. Massimo.
Well, let me remember that FEPS promoted a very important conference in Budapest about European values in post-communist societies. It was very interesting. It was important also because it was not only a cultural event, but also a solidarity event. And I do believe, I fully agree with Kambadelis, Orban has to stay at the center of our electoral campaign, because we must remember to our citizens that the Merkel party is also the Berlusconi and Orban party, the same party. And we are alternative to that party. Second, well, I do believe that about the trade unions, about workers, because I think the voters are the workers, not the trade unions. And there are different situations, but I do agree. We are losing in many countries the consensus of the workers. And many times the workers are the people who support the populistic movements, including the right. Why? Because they feel they are not protected by us, as in the past. And in the past, the social protection was through national policies. The national state was instrumental for social protection. And now it's impossible to provide the same protection without changing the European policies, at least European policies. I believe also the international rules. And it's difficult to understand that. But this is, in my view, the new challenge for socialists. To put the social protection at the center of our European politics and our international commitment. Because the traditional social protection guaranteed by the national state today, facing the globalization and the global competition, becomes always more difficult and sometimes impossible.
Thank you very much. So last but not least, Katharina.
Thank you very much. I will pick the question of Zita on European citizenship. I'm very proud to be the ambassador of European citizenship here in my country. And I can tell you that the Citizens Initiative is a great tool which people can use. And we know that already we have one which is successful, the one on water. But I would like to speak a little bit on the other one, which is very important. It's the historical Citizens Initiative #1. It's called Fraternité 2020. And this is a very important initiative, and I would like to ask you all to support it, to sign. You can do it via internet. And this initiative is speaking about the future. It's speaking about more investment in education and in mobility. It's a very crucial, very important, and this is also one of the ways how we can show to the European citizens that we strongly support these issues, and we are not just talking, but really doing something. So Citizens Initiative is a very good tool, and it can strengthen the democracy, and I'm very happy that the people are starting to use this initiative, and they can really, themselves, they can change the European Union, the way how European Union is deciding. So I'm very happy. And I would like to say to my colleague Sylvia that you will find Zita and you can ask her question directly, because there is no more floor for the other audience. Sorry. Thank you. Let you vote.
She wants to mention you that she wants you to mention let people vote. So it's very important.
Yes, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much. I think a lot of important points were brought forward by the experts here in the panel. One of them, I would like make a sort of brief kind of conclusion of today's discussion, which of course is not the end of the discussion, because there's still a lot of work to be done. But the economic and financial crisis has contributed to the growth of populism and nationalism, as was said here today, because of the policies of the right-wing governments that were implemented, of austerity only, that made the situation even worse. And as one of the panelists said, it has led to empty wallets and streets filled with people. So we basically need an alternative economic and social agenda, and I think that's also an important task of the PS, and the PS is working on that very actively together with a member organization. So we need to invest in growth, has been said, we need to invest in new jobs, and we really need to provide a perspective for the future. A good example also brought to the table here today was the Youth Guarantee Initiative of the Party of European Socialists, and again in close cooperation with the member parties. So also mentioned was that we need to break away from the technocratic and neutral style of politics. It's not just when there's financial crisis that you can use it to do whatever you like and say, you know, we don't have an option. You do have an option, and one of the options being forwarded was that, yes, of course there need to be budget cuts, but on the other hand you also can provide an agenda for investment and growth, because we need really to have a motor to get the economy going again. So what was said is that we need politics, a politics of choices, politics where, yes, we have some conflicts, but we can show the difference, and also use the opportunity next year to make the use of the opportunity to have a common candidate for the position of the presidency of the European Commission. I think the interesting part is that we were the first party who was really starting to work on this actively. There's other parties who are also coming with a common candidate, and there's definitely an interest to organize, for example, debates together to really show people the difference and to politicize Europe, to ask important political questions. So the last thing that was brought to the table, which I found also very interesting, is that we have to build alliances with trade unions. We have to build alliances with youth organizations. We have to build alliances with women organizations. Basically, we have to build alliances with citizens. And we have to do this in order to be able to build an agenda of hope, as was said, hope to get back into decisive positions, to build an agenda where people and not policies are at the core, in order to build and to establish a fair society and to build a fairer future in the member states and in Europe. I would like to thank the panelists very, very, very much for their contributions. So thank you very much, Jean-Christophe. Thank you very much, Laszlo. Thank you very much, Massimo. And thank you very much, Katharina, for your active participation. And also thank you very much to the people who intervened from the plenary.